Hi everybody, welcome back to the second session of Engage You Cumbria. It's Catherine here. I hope you're all well. We just wanted to say, or take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to all the followers on Facebook, all the subscribers of the YouTube channel. We want more, so spread the word as well. Just a quick reminder that the aim of this is very much to bring some energy, some positivity, and even if it is just a break in the day for your monotony and the isolation that we're going through at the moment. Last session, I learned so much. I'm peeling my garlic differently. I'm using the broccoli stalk differently from John Fell, one of our top chefs in Cumbria. Claire kept us mobile, and Alfie's introduced some competitions for the kids in the house as well. So if you didn't see any of that, the first session is on the YouTube channel recorded, so please play that back. So first up is Claire. So she's keeping us mobile, so I'm going to hand straight over to Claire. Claire, are you there?
I am. Hi Catherine, how are you?
Good, thank you. Over to you.
Good. Hello everybody, nice to see you all again. So my section today is a little bit more talking, so I've decided to opt for a chair to begin with. So today I want to, it struck me the other day that before we kind of go into this exercise, there's a massive part that we're missing that people get when they go to the gym and they go to fitness classes and they have a personal trainer. And that's, they get the element of the personal trainer. And the personal trainer, you know, the part where they give you the exercises and tell you what to do, that's actually a very small part of their job role in helping you. The rest of it is about giving you guidance, advice, and making sure that they correct what you do so you don't injure yourself. So it struck me the other day that I really need to be a personal trainer for you guys and to give you that help and advice while you're in isolation, to make sure that by the time that you in one of the emotions that happen when people exercise on their own. So just very quickly, why do we exercise? What are the benefits of this exercise? So, well, the main benefits, without going into too much anatomy and physiology, is we've got the strengthening of the muscles and bones. We've got improved CV system, which is basically our heart and our lungs and the efficiency of them working. It helps us to reduce our stress levels, it boosts our memory, and it aids things like our sleep, amongst many of the other benefits that it has. So I've compiled the top 5 in my experience, and I've been at this a very long time. So the top 5 things I think that people do when they exercise on their own and in the home without any guidance from anybody else. So the first thing really for me is skipping the warm-up. Now, we all know, especially when we've got busy lives, how we think that we just want to get to that main bit of exercise and sweat and burn those calories. And we forget how important the warm-up is. There's a reason why people do warm-ups on all these exercise videos and apps that you see out there. And I guess the quickest way that I can describe it, and I've got myself this little rubber band, is if you think of your body like a rubber band, if we have a rubber band and it's cold and we start to stretch it, we get these little fibres on the edge of the rubber band that start to split. And that's basically what our muscles are doing. So if we haven't warmed up properly, our muscles will be starting to have these real minute tears. And if we actually went too far with it, there's a possibility that we could actually then snap or break that muscle, for want of a better word. So just like a rubber band, if we gradually stretch it and warm it up, then we find it becomes more pliable, and exactly the same with our body. Okay, so really important. A warm-up should last 6 to 8 minutes, and it's not just about warming up your body, it's about your blood flowing and getting that warm, getting all of those joints lubricated, getting our mind into the right set for it as well. So my second tip is to make sure that you have a goal, because what your goal is depends on what type of exercise that you want to choose. And just because you're watching this today doesn't mean that I've gone. You can contact me on the Engage You Cumbria channel. So if you've got questions that you want to ask, please feel free to drop us a line. But having a goal, what do you want to achieve from your exercise? So for example, is it that you want those cardiovascular benefits, so that you need to start increasing how your heart and lungs and the efficiency of that is being able to work? Is it that you want to start building muscle? So in that case, you need to start looking at things to do that at home that build muscular strength. Is it that you're wanting to start looking a bit more toned? So in that case, you might need to look at muscular strength and endurance exercises so that you're getting that toning. Are you wanting to lose fat? Because if you are, then you need to stay at a lower level of exercise. And again, look at the type of cardiovascular exercise that you're taking part in. I wanted to help you a little bit with this because we don't have enough time on these small videos to do a big class for you. So I've had a look at what's out there with regards to apps and classes and things that you can take part in and things that perhaps I didn't know that were out there. And I have to be honest, by an absolute mile, if I was to advise anybody to go to anything, it would be the Peloton app. Now, people think that this is about recycling with the machines and you've got the little video class on your screen. Actually, the Peloton app has literally got everything that you would want out there. There's every type of class. You can change it for the timing that you've got. The instructors are impeccable and they don't just tell you what to do, they coach you what to do, which is really important. So have a goal and make sure that you're using the right application or the right system to do your class and achieve that goal. So a biggie for me is poor posture and poor technique. That's my third tip. So I'm going to put my chair to one side and stand up for a second. So the other day, I just need to flip that screen back a little bit so you can see a little bit more of me. So the other day, I did talk to you when we were doing the squat about our posture. And actually, so if I put the screen down for a second, the posture comes right from our feet. And we have to think about this in every exercise that we do. So if you can see, my feet are in line with my hips. My toes are facing forwards and I've got an alignment forwards. And when I'm doing exercise, what I want here is a slight bend in my knee. So I've got a nice, some people describe it as a nice soft knee. And then if I flip the screen back a little bit, so you can then see coming upwards to my hips, I've got a nice alignment here. And what I want is to pull my tummy in so that I've got that core engaged all of the time. Now, whether you're doing a standing exercise or an exercise on your back, laying on your back, or an exercise where you're on your front, what you want is that posture throughout the whole time. So when I come up to here on my shoulders are actually above my hips here. And my head, I need to keep my neck in alignment with my spine all the time. We all make some real common mistakes when we're tired from our exercise. This is where common mistakes come out. We start to slouch. We forget about our posture. We forget about our core. We drop our heads and our chins down because we're tired. We need to start thinking about what we call the kinetic chain of exercise. And a healthy body is like a machine, really. All the joints and segments all work with each other, and one thing has an effect on another thing. So if we're doing something poorly, for example, from our feet, believe it or not, that will have an effect all the way up that kinetic chain, all the way to our neck and head. Now imagine if we keep repeating that mistake again and again and again, what we're doing is we're starting to cause ourselves what might just be called a niggly injury to begin with, and then suddenly that niggly injury has become something a lot bigger. So please think about your posture and alignment, that core, whether we're standing, whether we're laying, or whether we're on our front. Think about that alignment all the time. So my fourth tip is the right fuel, and that includes your water and your food. Think about what you're putting in your mouth, and it's not just about right before the exercise or right after the exercise. It's no good just having a bottle of water while the exercise and going for it straight after. We have to think about it the night before. For example, if we're having a cheeky couple of glasses of wine or a cheeky couple of cans of beer, then that might have an effect on how our body responds to the exercise the next day. Even if we're doing it kind of at lunchtime the next day, it might make us feel sluggish, the same as our food that we're eating. So if you're wanting to be healthy with your exercise and wanting to reach those goals, think about what you're eating and drinking every day surrounding that. Now, that's not to say that we can't have the things that we want, because it's all about a healthy balance, but think about it in a balanced set of scales way. And then the fifth common mistake that people make, in my opinion, is not having enough recovery. Your recovery time is just as important as your exercise time. We replenish our energy in that time of recovery. We repair those damaged muscles. If we go back to this elastic band effect, all those little frays that we've caused on our muscle, we need to give them time to repair. If we don't, it's more likely that we're going to cause another injury or make that injury worse. And we need to allow the body to adapt to the stress of the exercise that we've done. That's where the real effect takes place. So make sure that you use that recovery time between your exercise sessions, and don't just go all out all at once. Any personal trainer will tell you recovery, 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 and replenishment is just as important as the exercise itself. So that's my 5 tips for today. Absolutely watch this back all of the time, have a look at those, decide what you want to do, and if you want advice and guidance, you've got your goal but you don't really know where to go, send us a private message, send us a message on Facebook, and we're more than happy to help, and I can pick up the phone, FaceTime you, Zoom you, or do anything else to try and support you during this time. Back to you, Catherine. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Claire. Thank you. Wow, some great advice there, guys. I'm just hydrating, obviously. So yeah, some great advice. And as Claire said, this is all recorded and will be on our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel. So do go back and play it whenever you need that advice again. So you'll remember last time we broadcast, we had John Fowle, top Cumbrian chef. We've now got, bringing to this section, another very local man in the name of Gerard Richardson. You'll probably have seen him roaming the streets of Whitehaven, and best known for the fine wine and coffee merchants in Whitehaven, as well as countless events, countless festivals. So there's nobody better to bring you to this community support channel than Gerard Richardson. Over to you, Gerard. Are you there?
Hi, can you see me? Right. Well, follow that, as they say. And I'm going to be doing quite a bit of slouching, so Claire probably won't be impressed by this. But my stance is a relaxing drinking stance, something like this. And we're going to be talking about port. Now, port, really interesting subject, especially if you're into your wines. Very, very few people actually venture into port. And I think a lot of that reason for most of us, same as sherry, is that we probably visited Granny or Granda years ago, and they had a decanter on the countertop, and that decanter had port, sherry, Madeira, and it was probably open for weeks, if not months. In our case, it was probably a year. And the problem is the wine inside is oxidized, because port and sherry, like any other product, they go off. They go off very, very fast, 5-6 days tops. A wine, 3 to 4 days. So you have to be a little bit careful. And you have to, I think, go back this Christmas at some point and retry a lovely, classy wine. Anyway, we're going to have a little chat. There's various styles of port. You've got white port, ruby port, and rosé. And I'm going to get those out of the way for a start. Just avoid them. White port, to me, and obviously this is a personal recommendation, it tastes like 2-stroke petrol or I imagine what two-stroke petrol would taste like. Ruby Port is just thin and tannic for me. There are one or two examples, so ask your wine merchant, reading the books, you will find a good one, but by and large, they're cheap and nasty. And Rosé Port is an abomination. I think it's a crime against humanity. Anyway, before we go any further, I'm going to open one while we talk, because my throat does get dry when I'm rabbiting a bit. So this one that we're going to open is a 10-year-old Tony, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Tonys once I get the thing opened. Port, as you'll see, quite often comes with a corked top. They will also sometimes come, usually the vintage ports, with an actual cork that you have to put a corkscrew in. But these ones, nice and easy. Now remember that most ports, decent ports, have been aged for quite a while in the bottle. This one's 10-year-old, so always be nice and gentle when you're turning the cork out. The last thing you wanted to do is to break. And there, while we're at it, by the way, I'll tell you about some of the faults in wine, because people quite often break a cork up, or they get a wine and bits of cork fall off into the glass itself. That is not a corked wine. So don't go returning a wine to your wine merchant or in a restaurant because it's got corks floated in it. They're just croutons. You can scoop them out with your fingers, put them on your saucer. Corked wine is actually horrid. It stinks. It smells like a dirty, dank old dishcloth, and you can't mistake it. It's caused by an infection, TCP, in the actual cork tree itself. And just a note on that, even these screw top wines that they brought in many years ago, and now even some of the finest wines in the world are screw top. In the top of the screw itself is a piece of cork. So contrary to what experts around the world have been telling people for years, you can still get corked wines with a screw top. So be very careful. Anyway, I'm going to pour a glass. Now, we've probably all seen those piddly little port glasses that people use. I don't like them. I like my wine, whatever it is, to breathe. And I usually use a wine glass. Now, that's slightly larger than a standard wine glass. That's what my wife drinks from. That's mine. That's slightly larger than a large wine glass. It's actually a gin and tonic goblet, but it gives lovely aeration. And that doesn't mean that I'm a drink too much or a plonky. You still put the same amount in, but I like to really swirl a wine and breathe it. And I'll show you that process in a second. But if I'm desperate, I always have Big Bertha at hand as well. This was sent to me from a Spanish vineyard many years ago. I have actually used it for a video, and it was quite comical. But you do have to wipe the mess up around your mouth at the end of it. Anyway, let me have a little pour of this. And if we can hold that up to the camera, you might, depending on the light, be able to see why they call them Tonys. A Tony port basically loses quite a bit of its colour to the cask that it's aged in. But what it takes from that cask as well is vanilla. And so the wine itself softens. It becomes almost caramel in style. So we'll go through the little tasting process first, and I'll tell you a little bit more about port in general. So what you want to do first, take a look at it, make sure there's nothing floating, and we're not meaning bits of cork, we're meaning sediment, or if the wine itself has really gone rank and off, sometimes you'll see a cloudy substance. You'll spot most faults just from looking at the wine itself. The next thing you want to do is sniff. Now to sniff, what you want to do is aerate, and that's why I like a big glass. So give it a really good swirl, and then just record mentally your first thoughts. Now, there's nothing complicated about this. There's nothing snooty about it. People often have a laugh about it, but when you're a professional, when you're buying wine that might be in your shop for a season, you've got to get it right, and you've got to make sure that what you're buying is something that's both commercial, good quality, and in our case, because of the style of shop, sometimes we're buying wines that we're going to sell in the shop for quite a few years before they're sold. In fact, we've got a number of ports going back to the 50s. We've got Madeiras going back to the 30s. And until last year, when I drank the last bottle, we had Madeira from the 18th century. Anyway, so you've had a swirl, you've had a sniff, you've recorded your first thought, and then the next thing you want to do is the tasting process. And this is where you've got to make your face look like a cat's bum. So I'll show you that, and afterwards you spit out, but I'm a lad from Cleatamore, we don't spit out. So I'll show you the process. So what you do, make your face look like a cat's bum, rapidly draw the air in over the wine, and what you want to do is almost turn the wine into an aerosol, and then you breathe out through your nose. Now that's careful, breathe out through your nose, not force the liquid out through your nose. The latter is called drowning, and it's not really recommended. That is absolutely stunning, by the way. I could sit and talk about that one for ages, but what you get with an aged Tawny, because it has this relationship with the port, you do get this lovely, soft, almost toffee finish to it, but you still get the powerful blackberry fruit, and that comes from one of the prime grapes in port, which is Touriga Nacional. It's a big, dark, heavy bruiser of a grape. And the way they make port, I'll run through the basic style first. Port is made like any other wine. It's grapes fermented, but the fermentation is artificially stopped. Now, this can be done by warming or cooling, but whichever method they use, port houses stop the fermentation, and they stop it when it's about 7% alcohol. And the reason they stop it is because they want to retain some of the sugars rather than convert them all to alcohol itself. When you do that, you actually retain a naturally sweet wine. And the way they bring it up to 18 to 20% is by adding brandy. And it's generally a clear brandy, usually made on the vineyard itself. And that brings it up to a whopping, 18, 20, sometimes 21%, which is what gives port that heady feel, that heady flavour. And it can also, the alcohol and the fact that you have some natural sugars left in the glass, in the grape, sorry, it can help the port to age for a long time. And as I said, we've ports in the shop going back to the 50s. We've had them going back a lot older than that. And the oldest one I've actually tasted and enjoyed was 1928. And that was just absolutely sublime. Anyway, in port itself, the main style, or the main style that most people will know about, is called vintage port. And vintage port is actually very, very rare. It's a port has to be declared. It sounds grand, it sounds a little bit snooty, but a declaration is, I'm just going to get into my relaxed posture now. This is my drinking posture, so just ignore me. There is actually a synergy between what Claire was talking about, by the way, because you do have to have a warming up process for wine, but sadly that involves warming the wine as opposed to warming your body. However, I do often get plenty of exercise. Right, so where were we? Yeah, vintage ports, they're declared usually 3 times in a decade. It's not a fixed thing. The port house itself has to declare that the grapes are exceptional, and they locally declare a vintage, but the vintage is only officially recognized by the world if the Portuguese wine authorities also then recognize the vintage. So vintages, subsequently, because of this mix between quality and democracy, are exceptionally rare. So 3 times in a decade on average. It's what makes vintage port so exceptionally expensive as well. And bottle prices can range from 50s to hundreds. And in fact, I tasted one about 15 years ago that was £30,000 a bottle. It was actually sublime, to be honest. And if I win the lottery, I'm getting a case. Anyway, the type of port that's made all year round, every vintage, is called late bottle vintage or vintage character. And to be honest, these are the ones that I think are the best value, especially if you can find a vintage character wine or a late bottled vintage wine that has the year on it that coincides with a vintage declaration, because then you're effectively getting declassified vintage port. You're getting a wine that just didn't quite make the grade for the big boy itself, if you like. Now, onto this style, Tawny. Tawny port differs from vintage in that vintage port is it's matured in bottle. So they see sometimes 2 years in oak casks, and then they're put into bottle. They mature very, very slowly. They throw a sediment, and that's why you have to decant them. Tawny ports, on the other hand, are aged for many, many years. And in the case of this one, 10 years, the 10 years are what is spent in cask. and then it might spend 5, 10, 15 years in someone's cellar in bottle. But aged tawnies rarely go off in bottle. So while they will mature a little bit more in bottle itself, effectively the maturation process stops when the port is taken out of the cask. It's a slightly unusual style. And tawny port itself has a number of different forms. There's basic tawny, avoid it like the plague, to be honest. And that's a really unusual thing to say these days, isn't it? And then you've got aged tawnies, and that's the like of this one. So that'll tell you exactly how old it is on the bottle. And then you have aged colheiters. Colheiter is like, it's basically a single vineyard wine, and it'll tell you the year of the vintage. What it won't tell you is how many years it's been matured. It doesn't need to, because you basically count back. It's like a vintage port. So if you've got a 1972 colheiter, then you know it's been in bottle for 40 odd years. Nice and simple. There's one final type of port that I should mention, and it's called Crusted Port. And if you get the chance to see any this Christmas, snap it up. Crusted Port is basically a very, very good quality ruby, the type I kind of dissed at the start. And what they do with those, they select the finest of the rubies, and they're usually sold in cask to British wine merchants. And the British wine merchants will then bottle them themselves at a very young age when they're highly tannic, and they'll form a crust over a number of years, hence the term crusted port. So people get confused. It's not vintage port. It never has an age statement on. And these wines will also need decanted. Now, it's rare now because new Portuguese laws mean that all wine has to be bottled in Portugal. So, the Portuguese don't like the whole crusted port idea. It was an idea of British wine merchants, and it was never approved. So if you can find any, snap it up. Absolutely snap it up this Christmas. Anyway, I'm going off now. Back to Catherine. Goodbye.
Wow, Gerard, thank you so much. You are definitely passionate about your port. And if you need to lend out that big wine glass, I'm on the top of the list. So that section, guys, is very much about bringing local business owners, local people, unusual hobbies, interests, guidance, tips. If you know anybody locally that would fit the bill in terms of getting us through this isolation, please engage with us on Facebook or send us an email, and we'll try our very best to get them on. So next up, kids don't go anywhere. We've got Alfie just about to come online. He's been going through some of the jokes and some of the ways that some of you kids have been helping your adults. So Alfie, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Hi guys, hope you've had a great weekend and have been keeping yourselves busy. So you remember last week I asked for your best joke and ways to help your family. We had a great response, but here's my favourites. Are you ready? Here come the shout-outs. My favourite joke was sent in by Guy. Hi Guy. Why did the student eat his homework? Because the teacher told him it was a piece of cake. That's real. Thanks, Guy. The best way to help your family came in from Dexter. Hi, Dexter. He said he's been helping by being kind to his sister and unloading the dishwasher. Great work. You can still send in your favourite jokes and ideas on how to help in the house. Keep them coming. Send us an email. However, for this week's challenge, I'm asking you to build a Lego model of something you have been doing with your family whilst in isolation. This could be a model of you sat down to dinner, playing a game or sport, or your favourite toy. Be creative. There will be a little prize for the best one, so send in a photo to our email and we'll show it next time. Great to speak to you all again. Can't wait to hear from you. Now back to Catherine.
Thanks, Alfie. Absolutely awesome. Great jokes, great ways of helping adults around the house as well. So before we go, I just wanted to share a bit of reflection. And in my day job as a coach, I have been talking to a couple of clients recently about the challenges and the stresses and the emotions that have come with this isolation and this challenging time. It seems to be that there is a lot of people that are obviously working from home, that have now got the kids in the house as well, and you're all as a family trying to work in one house for a lengthy period of time, which obviously doesn't happen normally. You may be finding that your family feelings are more exposed at the moment, and obviously that can affect the way that your house is running as well. There is a lot of advice out there, so I would just give yourselves permission to use what works for you. Somebody I had the pleasure of working with, Julia Samuel, MBE. She has her own Facebook page, and I would absolutely recommend you searching on Facebook for Julia Samuel. She is an expert. She is a well-known author in terms of situations like this of change and where emotions are high as well. Something I thought might help, certainly in terms of connecting with your family members, and it might just be pressing the pause button, the reset button. You may have house rules that have been in place before this isolation. Things may have changed dramatically. So I'd like you to sit down, maybe at breakfast, all together as a family or at dinner, and just talk openly and connect and communicate with each other, and maybe consider these two questions. If each of you share what has gone well for me this week and what has been difficult for me this week. And when that person is speaking, and it might be your child, it might be your grandparent, when that person is speaking, truly listen to what they're saying with no judgment, no comment until they've finished. And if you can share those experiences and thoughts, you may well decide on some new house rules that you need to put in place in terms of this isolation period. But the aim is that we feel more connected, and sometimes, as I say, we just have to press that pause or that reset button. So wish you luck with that little challenge. You have the opportunity to send in all your ideas, lots of Lego models for Alfie. Tell us anybody that you want to come in and feature on this broadcast. But in the meantime, I would like to bring everybody today back in and just to say goodbye. So guys, take your mute buttons off and just come back in. And oh look, I knew it. Claire's got her port. She's already enjoying that. I'm on my rehydration. And Gerard, yeah, Gerard's there. Thank you everybody so much. We really look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.